I'm going to welcome you to the 2021 Small and Minority Business Committee budget hearing. Tonight, we're going to hear from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the Department of Development about how they plan to support small businesses in the coming year. Obviously, this has been a tremendously difficult year for small businesses in Columbus, especially for businesses of color and women-owned business owners who face additional barriers to capital, to access, and more. The city has provided more than $10 million over the past year to directly support and help small businesses. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion helped connect countless businesses to financial institutions and the Paycheck program, all while continuing to advance the implementation of the diversity study and more. But we know there is far more to be done. So I'm excited to hear from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion and the Department of Development about their proposed plans for 2021. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank this team for the work that they've done this year, quickly pivoting and becoming a type of first responders to our small businesses. We all were present and aware that that first round of PPP that hit the streets early on during the pandemic didn't seem to make its way down to small businesses and certainly didn't make its way to our minority-owned businesses. And the city pivoted in a amazing way and created programs and connections that supported this community, because we know that small businesses are the backbones of our economy. And making sure that as many of them that were viable and that could survive this pandemic, we wanted to be there to be that bridge. And so I appreciate all of the directors and their teams for the support they gave to the community over the last several months. I want to say hello and present my council colleagues that are with us this evening. Councilmember Emmanuel Remy and Councilmember Shayla Favor. Our council members, feel free to jump in at any moment for questions. We can be a bit casual this evening as we go through this presentation, but we're going to start with Dr. Strawlings Johnson and her team to present their 2021 budget. Dr. Johnson.
Great, thank you very much. Angela, if you could give me the ball, I will absolutely display something as we walk through this. Can everyone see my screen? Great. Just to confirm, are you able to see the screen, everyone? I'm assuming that's a yes. Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. So as we walk through this, one of the things that I wanted to make sure we did today, and I would be remiss not to introduce my deputy director and cohort in crime when it comes to ODI, Demita, who is also on this call. I'm going to walk you guys through everything that we've done, not only this year, but also to set the premise for next year. So we can talk about the Office of Diversity and Inclusion as a critical enabler to where we'd like to see this city in terms of ensuring our small minority and women-owned businesses are participating in the opportunities that obviously will come as a result of, and hopefully as we come out of this horrible pandemic. So as we look at this, there are several things that I'd want to walk through. Specifically, I want to talk about our key priorities. Obviously, as President Hart mentioned, the CARES Act funding, some of the things that we were able to participate in. Some accomplishments we're incredibly proud of inside of the office. And then also take you through our 2021 plans very briefly, and then allow some time for some questions at the end of this presentation. So I think that I wanted to reestablish who we are, because at the end of the day, this has been a very interesting year in terms of where we're going. And the creation of the Office of Diversity and Inclusion was obviously the first official act from Mayor Andrew Ginther. And this is one of the things that I'm incredibly proud of, either before coming to the city and now being in the city, to be a part of this office, because everything that we're trying to do in this office, following the guise of the equity agenda, is to ensure that this city reaches its full potential in terms of ensuring every resident and small minority and women-owned businesses is able to participate in the opportunities that we will be able to provide. I'm not too sure if everyone on the call had a chance to see the new structure for the office, but as we look at this, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that this office is laser focused on ensuring that we are aligned with our stakeholders, City Council being one of them, the community being another, and of course our suppliers, our community at large. But what's most important about this flow chart that you can see in front of you is the fact that all of our peers, our people, are aligned with each one of our departments. And this is incredibly important as we look at trying to drive participation across the city from a utilization perspective. So without going through every one of the participants, the folks on our team, I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew that this is how we are structuring ourselves as we move forward, so that there's an opportunity for everyone to have the one-to-one conversation with ODI to ensure that our MWBEs are participating in our RFP opportunities. So as we look at the department, I think that everyone's most familiar and comfortable with the supplier diversity arm from the office. That's one of the areas that's most prevalent inside of the city. But as we look at moving into 2021, one of the things that we've just recently started to stand up inside of this office is our workforce diversity arm. From a supplier diversity perspective to the far left, our focus is to ensure that the city is focused on sourcing goods and services from all of our diverse suppliers. We want to expand that. And our mission is to ensure that everyone participates where they can. From a workforce perspective, which is fairly new inside of the focus for the office this year, we are driving the reflection of diversity inside of the city. The reflection of the city itself should reflect the workforce that's participating inside of this. So as we look at this, I believe 30% of our population in Columbus is Black, and 80% of the businesses in Columbus are small minority businesses with fewer than 20 people. So it's very important that we recognize that there are two components inside of where we want to focus inside of our office as we go into 2021. So I created this very simple slide to say, what is it that we do? Again, from a supplier perspective, certification, contract compliance, advocacy, ensuring that we have the supportive services, monitoring, utilization, and of course, and most importantly, compliance. From a workforce perspective, which is very different than something that we've done in the past, it's about workforce and data collection, working hand in hand with our human resources partners inside of the city. Also driving recruitment, outreach, training, and ensuring that we have an inclusive workplace so that we can create the culture that will attract the participation that we want from a diverse population that's in the community that we're surveying. So as we look at 2021, what's our focus area? Public-private community partnerships. I'm going to talk about that in a second, to talk about some of the really interesting things that we're doing beyond just working within the city. Who are we reaching out to? Who are we starting to support so that they can enable some of our small businesses? Driving support for our suppliers, SMWBEs, as I spoke about earlier, workplace, environment, and culture. I'll talk about some of the programs that we will be implementing in 2021. And the most important thing, and you'll hear us talk about this inside of our positioning papers in 2021, as well as most of our marketing, we'll talk about the reflective workforce. No different than the reflective SMWBE, but we're also focused on, again, the workforce aspect of working in the city of Columbus. So what are some of the highlights? And I could make this a little larger if you can't see it, but to the far left, these are the strategic priorities that we provided to the mayor at the beginning of this year as we created our budgeting process. What I did was I extrapolated some of the priorities for 2021, and I placed them to the far right. So one of our primary projects, obviously, is to present a new minority and women-owned business enterprises program. In addition to that, number two, B2G Now is one of the software systems, our compliance software, where they're planning to launch. These are both tied to the disparity study, and I'm going to put a pin in that because at the end, we're going to take you through a slide so we can talk a little bit more in depth about where we are with the disparity study and the implementation and what we'll be doing in 2021. Number 3, we will be focused on launching a comprehensive outreach program, educational. Again, with COVID, it's all about standing up our small minority and women-owned businesses as best we can and as quickly as we can. And we started to create an educational program around that aspect. Just recently, we hosted a symposium for our workforce diversity. This year, we will be, or 2021 actually, we'll be hosting our benchmark biannual small business conference and Expo. What's going to be really interesting about this Expo this year, everyone, is it's going to be technology based. It's going to be a platform. So we are going to be able to not only allow folks to attend, but they'll be able to have interactive participation during this Expo. Barring COVID, if we're not able to do it face-to-face, we're able to pivot to a technology platform so that we can invite everyone to this opportunity so that they, again, have access to what the city is able to provide. Number 5, 6, and 7 are all tied to, I'm sorry.
I apologize. Look, is there any way that you can zoom in or make the screen full screen?
Absolutely.
Director, I sent you an email to have you click view there at the top. And simply, once view drops down, you can click full screen.
There we go. Is that better, Shan? Is that better?
Thank you.
Perfect. I'm sorry, I wish we'd known that in the beginning. I wouldn't have scrolled down. Not to mention, I have 2 glasses on, the one and the bigger one. So even I needed that. As we move forward, again, number 6, expanding our department diversity portfolio. Again, this is something new to the office where we've not had a portfolio of tools that our departments can actually use. And that includes everything from spot diversity training to micro learnings to one-on-one counseling. When I say counseling, peer discussions, to ensuring that when there's an opportunity inside of a department, our workforce team is able to look for tools and resources to help enable them when there's an opportunity. Another thing that we are proud about what we're going to be doing in 2021 is executing our D&I, the office's 30 by 30 challenge. I'm not too sure if everyone on this call saw the announcement from the mayor, but as a leader of an employer of over 8,000 employees, the city's committed to our workplace diversity. As I mentioned, that is where we're truly focused in addition to supplier diversity. So we're taking a moment to look inward. And so one of the things that the mayor has launched on the guys around the equity agenda was to ensure that we started to look at ourselves. And if we are saying that we want everyone to be diverse and inclusive, we're going to be doing the same thing. So the 30 by 30 challenge is an outgrowth of the pay equity challenge, where we are challenging ourselves to look like the following. In 30 months, we should have a diverse representation across the board. 30% representation, women and minorities, 30% growth in our supplier spend, 30% executive leadership in terms of representation, women and minorities, and of course, 30% board and commission appointments and representation. So it's an aggressive venture, but it's one of those things where we can't ask that of others if we're not doing that for ourselves. And again, I will speak more to that in a moment because that's one of our highlights that we will share about what we've done so far with that particular initiative. Number 8, collaborating with the Department of Public Safety to drive our recruiting. We'll talk about that. Data insights to our leadership, utilization, launching an inclusion web-based micro-learning platform. We've partnered with a firm called Blue Ocean, where as we look at the issues that folks are dealing with around the country and as well as here in the city, there are very specific training modules that we can provide to our department, to our leaders, to our peers on 10-minute segments to say, let's take a moment, let's learn something, let's reflect to see if this is what's happening. And oh, by the way, let's build on this one. Micro learnings around diversity and inclusion. So it's not the 4-hour training, we're talking micro learnings that can be sent, watched on the cell phone, watched on your laptop, and driven from there. We're also going to be expanding our external communications and marketing strategies. All of this is tied to our Minority Women-Owned Businesses program. So we have a very robust marketing strategy to ensure that everybody's going to be engaged and will be able to participate in this. And then, of course, most importantly, as I said, the priorities and our constituents on the first slide, expanding our relationships with advocacy groups as well as the community organizations. Incredibly important. We want to make sure the participation is there. And as I walk through what we've done with the disparity study, you'll see that there's some bright spots to ensure that we've done that. So what this meeting is all about is what are some of the budget highlights. At the top, I placed what we looked like from 2018 on to 2021 to show you the increase that we've received. The increase will allow us to do the following. At the bottom, I have about 11 things, very high level. Looking at that 6% increase, we're looking at a small staff growth from 9 to 14 in 2021. Implement the recommendations of the disparity study, funding the diversity management software program, and as we look at this, enhancing our programs so we can drive capacity. We need more MWBEs in our coffers so we can offer them as opportunities inside of our departments. Our portfolio from our workforce development opportunity, as I mentioned, the micro-learnings, some of the resources, training, not to mention outreach, recruitment, partnerships with some of the schools. And as I move into number 7, we are proposing that we look at diversity and inclusion, and for the city in 2021 to align with the mayor's equity agenda, rebrand to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So number 7 and 8, I'm particularly excited about because we are looking at partnership development opportunities with some of our technology bigwigs, from Google to Amazon Google and Amazon are the two that we're actually, and then of course, eventually we're going to look at Facebook from a small and minority business perspective. But the reason that that's incredibly important is because we had to make a decision earlier this year in the onset of COVID. What are we going to do to help some of our small businesses survive during this pandemic? Everyone had the brick and mortar, but not many people were able to quickly pivot into the virtual platform, to a virtual marketplace. So from a Google perspective, one of the things that the office did, and I'm going to just kind of talk about that for a quick second, one of the things that the office did was to actually work with Google, and we set up sessions so that some of the certified small minority women-owned businesses were able to attend so that they could look at their current platform to figure out how they can be first on the search bar so that more and more people would have the traffic to their organization. Number 8 and number 9, I spoke to 30 by 30 a few seconds ago, but the outreach strategy to promote inclusion through our human resources. Again, with our workforce arm, we have a seat at the table. So when we make those decisions, when we have those discussions about who do we find for the executive ranks for our 30 by 30, we are able to provide input and participate in those decisions. Number 10, an aggressive technology marketing, which is also tied to what we're going to be doing with Google and Amazon and, of course, some of the other programs. And then finally, and most importantly, we still need to make sure that we work with our departments hand in hand. And one department in particular is our public safety, ensuring that we're able to double the diversity in both police and fire ranks. And as you can see with today's recent announcement, I believe this class is at a 40-some%, just correct me if I'm wrong, but 40-some%, and that's one of the highest class in terms of diversity representation we've had in a while. So when I received the email from Zach, one of the things that he said was, can you please take a moment and just make sure you give us your KPIs? I'm going to keep them Sesame Street simple in terms of here's what we should be measured against in 2021. As we look at the 30 by 30 challenge, as I mentioned, this is the mayor's equity agenda, the impetus behind where we're going to ensure that we do the right things, look within first. We are, again, looking at 30 months, 30% women and minorities in the workplace, minorities in executives in our leadership roles, 30% increase in our supplier spend, and we will be able to track that. And then, of course, 30% growth in women and minorities in our board and commission appointments, the appointments the mayor and his office is able to participate in. Now, number 2, Again, that was workforce. Number two, participation in our big construction projects. We are aggressively going to be driving the 30% participation. As you know, that has been one of the critical focuses for the mayor in terms of the crew project, where we want to make sure that that participation stays at that high level. Again, it should be reflective of the workplace that we serve, and that's what our community is asking of us. And then finally, certification. Again, we want more people in the coffers. Our drive is 30% improvement year over year in terms of ensuring that we have more small minority and women-owned businesses in our coffers for certification. Right now, we have about 790 some in terms of certified folks right in the city. Our goal, again, 30% on top of that, and 30% on top of that, and 30% on top of that. That is our goal. So what have we done? What do we look like in terms of the utilization and spend across the city as we speak? I thought it'd be interesting to show everyone on this call a trend analysis so you could see from 2015 to where we are in 2020. And I have that blank deliberately so I can give you the information because I wanted to make sure it was complete. But again, we're not at the end of year analysis yet. But as you can see, on average, if you average the 5 across the board, it's about 10.5%. Right now, 2020, we're only at the half of the year, we're at 11.7%. So I feel very good that we're going to completely blow out these numbers across the board in terms of what our spend is inside of our department. But I just thought that this would be an interesting way for everyone to see that this is where we'd like to go inside of the office. And at some point, we'd like to see the spend not only where it's smaller at the red, we want it at the halfway mark, and we will be able to get there. So let me pause and say, this is what we're proud of. Yeah, our year in review. The office right now has about 127 different things that we'd like to talk to you about. But here's what we consider to be our top stories for 2020. Even in the midst of a pandemic, these are the things that this office was able to accomplish. And I wasn't able to do it alone. I have a small but very mighty team, as you saw earlier when I shared that work chart. But now, here are the things we've done in these two buckets. From a workforce perspective, I talked about the 30 by 30. We launched it, we're starting to track it, we're starting to meet with our departments so that we can have the action plans in 2021. We also hosted a very successful Govern Diversity and Inclusion Symposium. We had over 175 participants from Chicago to Philadelphia to Cleveland coming to this symposium where we provided best practices, and our very own President Harden also participated, at least kicking it off, where people were excited about some of the things that we're doing here in the city from a benchmarking perspective. We launched our first citywide employee engagement survey. Again, from a 30 by 30 perspective, we needed to know what we were doing. So that allowed us to have a baseline to say, what are people thinking inside of the city? People were incredibly engaged, and we had over 38% participation inside of that one. We also approved our gender pronoun signature line, so everyone is able to participate. We created our inclusion portfolio. So inside of this one, again, as I mentioned, we're going to have resources for not only our workforce team, but our supplier diversity team will be able to provide this to the city, as well as our partners that are participating inside of the city. Inclusion, our outreach, we've done quite a few .govs to all of our participants. Anyone that's representative in the city, we are making the concerted effort to be very deliberate in our outreach to every population. We're also partnering in 2021, and we just launched this week, where we're driving the Workforce Citivism program to relaunch it, kick it off, because again, participation, diverse outreach is incredibly important to us. So as we move into what we've done in 2020, from a supplier diversity perspective, increased participation in RFQs to identify our opportunities. Again, I gave you a small view of that when I said we're about 11%. You'll see that we'll probably be in the high 14% by the end of the year. That's our goal. Executing our disparity study, that is the word that everyone's been talking about. Again, as everyone knows, the disparity study and the executive order that the mayor released earlier this year has been driving quite a bit of information for all across the board. Our communities, we've been collaborating with consultants. We've been collaborating with our third parties, our community partners, and in a couple of seconds, I'll walk through what we've done, where we are, and what's next. I mentioned the spin for Q2 2020. We facilitated CARES dollars to our small partners. In addition, and I believe we mentioned this earlier, 150 plus new partnerships with our small businesses. As you know, when the pandemic hit, everybody was caught flat-footed. And this was one of those times when there was money that everybody needed inside of their businesses. So this office, again, my small but mighty team that you saw, literally came in on a Saturday, and we physically started to do a telemarketing term when we started to call anybody that was certified with the city, because again, we were calling and hanging up to find out, did you get your application in order to take advantage of the PPP funds? Some people said, absolutely, I'm good. Others did not. So with the help of the MWBEs, as well as Ohio MBE and regional banks, we were able to help 150 small businesses receive those funds. So our relationships with banks will be growing in 2021. I didn't put this down here, but it's incredibly important. We recognize, in addition to just tools in terms of, yes, you can respond to an RFP, access to capital is incredibly important. And we're going to be working with Director Stevens, who's going to be speaking in a couple of seconds, around driving those bank relationships so people have access to the funds. As part of our portfolio, I mentioned that earlier. One of the things that we're incredibly proud about is certification training, business bookkeeping, writing capability statements, construction training. All of this is going to be, is now currently, but also will be even more pronounced in 2021 in terms of the portfolio for anyone that is a certified vendor for the city. And all of this is offered to them at no cost to them, but we are here to enhance, to uplift, and to help them get those opportunities. Our certification growth already grew 30%, and we're planning to do it further. Right now, from a crew perspective, our goal is 30. We're at 27% with more opportunity before the end of the year. And then again, one of the other things that I mentioned earlier that we've done that we're really proud of is our technology pivot. And I say that because a lot of folks had not interacted with Amazon. How do I get my goods and services on the marketplace so I can sell since my doors are closed due to COVID? How do I ensure that I have a platform? How do I even build a website? Some cases they didn't have it, and some they did. But we enabled them through those partners, and we're going to be doing even more of that in 2021. And then finally, as we wrap up our year in review, I just wanted to pause at this point to say I think that one of the things that most folks would like to know more about is what we've done with the disparity study. So as we look at the outcomes to the far left, it's really important to know that this was our guidance to start. This is what we said we wanted to make sure we did. The disparity study started pre-Beverly, but now is here at post-Beverly. But I think it's important for me to point out the work that Demita Brown and team have done up to this point to get here. Demita is one of our project managers. She's my deputy director, and she's done all that she could to ensure that these outcomes are aligned in the implementation that you see to the right. So as we walk through this, 1 through 5, we've done. What I think it's important to point out is, where do we go from here? You know, we had Mason Tillman, our consultant, review the disparity study, create the documents so that we can have the recommendations, as you can see, at number 5. But now, where do we go? We are 2.5 weeks before the end of 2020, and the expectation starting in 2021 is for us to have an MWBE plan ready and presented to City Council in the first quarter. There may be a small delay because we expanded the scope so that we can have additional input from some of our partners that asked us, because again, we engaged folks outside of the community to participate, and we took all of that input. We didn't do this in a vacuum. And then after that occurs, the MWBE program adoption will follow any other council approved initiative. So We will obviously allow input from the city, input from the community. And then again, while the dates have not been codified, they're not in stone, this is roughly right in terms of where we're going to go with the disparity study. So just to recap, the year-end top stories, which includes the disparity study, that's the aha moment for this office. And I think that we're poised to do even more in 2021. The budget that we are planning to receive, obviously, will allow us to propel our small and minority women-owned business, but also to open up the arms to the minority recruitment aspect that we want to drive inside of the city as well. Two components: supplier diversity, workforce diversity, 2021. It's about the business of diversity, and that's what we're here to do. So I'm going to pause at this point to see if there are any questions from the team.
Thank you, Director. That was a very full and robust presentation. I think it speaks to the breadth of work of your department and the breadth of work and need that is out there, both internally and externally, as you go about your work. I guess
it's a lot to do. Yeah, I was going to say, it's a lot to do and a lot more to do. I mean, I know it looks simple when you only look at 9 slides, but 9 slides will not capture everything that my team's participating in, but also ready to step up and do in 2021.
Well, we appreciate it. I guess I'll start from the end and maybe even work backwards. With the disparity study, are there any specific cost implications with the implementation first quarter 2021 of the disparity study that are articulated in this budget?
So I'm also going to include Demita in here just so I can make sure that I speak very specifically to anything that may have changed in the last day or so. So Demita, if you want to unmute, please feel free to chime in. But right now, our expectations are such that we may need additional funds if we decide to go beyond the scope with expanding the work with additional research, additional outreach. That's what I anticipate right now. We have received some additional requests to say, think about this. We want to make sure we include anything in here. So if that includes additional work from JD Squared, that includes additional work where we have to do some research around participation inside of the community, we'll do that.
Right. I would just echo Director Johnson's comments. We would anticipate, given the expanded scope and some of the additional due diligence that we've undertaken to ensure that we have a very comprehensive implementation plan, there may be some cost impacts. Those are unknown at this point, but we are quickly coming together and trying to assess what needs to happen and be able to come to council early next year with some recommendations and requests if needed.
But are those currently in the budget? So will that be within, if you come to council, will that be within the scope of the 1.8 million, or are there additional costs that council needs to consider between now and the passage of this budget in February?
Good question, Director. If you don't mind, I'll take that.
Yeah, absolutely.
There are some limited costs that are included in the 2021 budget that were anticipated. The scope expansion was not anticipated. And so we are trying to, at this point, really get a handle on what needs to happen next. The elongated time frame is also contributing to those cost overruns as well. But we are working to get our arms wrapped around that, and we'll likely need to come back to council and the administration for additional funding.
Okay.
I
don't know the numbers at this point.
Right.
Certainly.
Right. I would love to give you a number, but and if I said it was this much, it would probably be this much.
Right.
All right. Well, just as chair of the committee, and if you want this to be considered as part of the budget process, we will, of course, my office and council will work with your team as we work through this process over the next 2 months. But if those requests are coming, we just want to be be aware so we can work through those so that they can be reflected in the final budget if council sees fit.
Great. Thank you.
Perfect.
Director, you hit on your participation in development deals. I think this is really big for council and been really important to council. You know, first we saw that with the crew negotiations got us to the 30% goal. Council then negotiated with the Peninsula project and got to a 30% goal on the garage that the city is financing. And finally, we worked through your office with the Easton and Polaris negotiations.
Right.
And your engagement is critically important. And that's on the front end. So the question is, who and how are we tracking that on the back end so that we are making sure that our partners are matching their commitments?
So, I'm sorry, go ahead, Davida. Because I was going to say, we have several folks that are already aligned with the crew. I think one of the folks, his name is Dwayne Parks. If you want to know specifically from the team, he's our Supplier Diversity Business Development Specialist, and he's been aligned. And I believe that between him, as well as working with one of the consultants on the crew, for example, has driven wholeheartedly that number from where I started when I came on board was around 18% to the 27 now, and he's planning to do the same. So it's a lot of hand-holding, it's a lot of one-on-one, it's a lot of participation in terms of alternatives and suggestions and ensuring that there's a pipeline of certified folks for them to choose from, which is also a big deal, which is why that 30% growth piece that I talked about, the year over year, goes hand in hand with what you just said in some of the big projects.
Okay.
I would just add in
Please.
addition,
Please.
I'm sorry, in addition to that, our team has been partnering with the Department of Development very closely in working with all of the developers, specifically in the Scioto Peninsula. But through that partnership, we have been opened up to developers all around the city and have had an opportunity to not only infuse contract language and standards into those development deals, but to also work one-on-one with each of those developers around their projects, their needs, their connections to our small minority and women-owned business community. Those have already begun, but there will be a much harder push beginning in 2021. Some of those meetings are already on the books to begin that intense work of really understanding their projects and driving inclusion of our minority and women businesses.
And you know, good catch, Demita. I am so sorry because I think it's incredibly important for me to mention. We do work hand in hand with Director Stevens and his team. And everything that he does, we're there to say, or he's there to say, what can we do to ensure these projects have the right participation? So I was remiss to even mention that because, again, partnership is all that we can rely on to ensure that we make sure that those opportunities are there.
Thank you. I know from my standpoint as chair of this committee and role as council president, this is going to be really important in all the deals that are coming forward to council. And maybe I'll have Director Stevens follow up more when we get to his portion. But how we track those commitments are just as important as making those commitments. And also, what's important is having ODI at the table. Because we're not just pulling 30% out of thin air. We're pulling out what we see as the real capacity out there for minority businesses to actually compete for this work. And so finding a way to formalize you guys being at the table with those larger deals. I know that from here on out, I'm going to ask, if there's a vote that comes before council, have you guys been consulted, and what is the number that we're asking, and make that a strong portion of our conversations. I'll ask just one more question, then turn it over to my colleagues for any additional questions. Well, I'm just going to combine two of my questions into one question. Workforce. One, your internal workforce as a department. Over the last several years, we've talked about scaling up. You guys went through a pretty dramatic transition. where, I mean, I don't remember what the lowest number of staff you guys had at one point in the last 3 years. That's what I thought it was 2. But you know, the plan to get to 14, and if I can remember even back then, it's been pretty consistent that 14 was the number. Just asking somebody to talk about what full capacity gets us in staffing. And is there a commitment to get there in this 21 budget? And is that I think I heard that it was budgeted.
It's absolutely. Yeah, I'm glad you asked that question. And one of the things the first things that the mayor shared with me when I came on board was to do exactly what you're saying. He said, you know, at this point, here's where you look, where you are, and here's where we need to be. So without jumping ahead, as we speak, there may be 2 additional folks that will be coming on before the end of this year. So that's going to be happening in 2020. And then, of course, we have another business development as well as a supplier diversity specialist role that we'll be looking at in 2021 that we are planning to post at that point. So the approval's there, the support is there. We're now doing the outreach and the posting, and we'll start interviewing.
Cool. I'm going to actually fall back and see if my colleagues have any questions. I'll follow up at the end. Yes, Councilmember Favor.
You know I had questions. Good evening, everyone. Director, thank you for that amazing presentation this evening. So I wanted to really just dive a little bit deeper into the 30 by 30 challenge. I absolutely love the concept of the goals that you are attempting to meet. But I think it's important to really explain to our residents how you are, what's the methodology to be able to get there, right? Like, how are you going to be able to accomplish these worthy goals?
Okay. So as we look at the 30 by 30 challenge, one of the things that we thought about when we first launched this was to look at what we did with the equal pay day for women, and the challenge that was developed and presented to the city of Columbus. And as we looked at this, one of the things that the mayor said is all about equity, it's all about participation. And instead of just looking at one pocket, we wanted to look at diversity across the spectrum. So as we looked at supplier diversity, we also looked at workforce diversity. And so to answer your question specifically around workforce, because supplier, we kind of talked through that one. But from a workforce perspective, working with my partner, Nikki Brandon, in Human Resources, one of the things that we recognized as we looked at our population, at the population of the employees in Columbus, as well as the participation of the folks outside of the Columbus. I think that 30% of our population in Columbus is Black minority inside of the city. And as we looked at this, what was our availability pool as we looked at filling the opportunities inside of the city? So we said 30% is the number compared to our peer cities where we potentially should be, and also based on the availability of minorities, Blacks and minorities inside of the city, so that we could potentially hire from. So how are we going to get there where we just can't mandate that you hire someone because of X? Obviously, we've got the qualified opportunity we want to look at, but we also want each department to say, let's look inward to say, what do we look like as an organization, as a department? Where do we have some opportunities where we can grow? And how, oh, by the way, in the city, do we create a pipeline of diverse talent that's qualified for these opportunities in these particular departments? So as we speak, my workforce development manager is working with human resources, and they're creating diversity plans for each one of the departments. Actually, most departments have some element of a diversity plan, but we're growing that diversity plan so that there's a very deliberate and intentional focus on, if we have an opportunity, are we looking at a diverse population to potentially fill that pool? And if not, do we want to continue to look further to ensure that we have participation to interview for said opportunity? And that's just on the small workforce perspective. In addition to that, from a workforce perspective, we look at retention. So when I mentioned the micro-learnings and I talked about some of the things that we have in our portfolio, how do we retain and how do we grow this population so that they're developed and they're ready to move throughout the pipeline inside of the city when there is an opportunity, whether it's in public service to the Department of Development? We want to make sure that we know who our talent is. Director Brandon is doing that one, but also the talent that we can help grow inside of that. And so there's additional things that we're doing that I don't want to go on the record to say we're we're going to do X, but there's some additional projects as well as initiatives that we may be putting forth to say, how do we have additional outreach? We're driving HBCUs. We're also working with some of the smaller schools. We have a program right now that we're going to be launching in 2021, Shayla, where we're going to say, how do we say take 100 kids and how do we prepare them for this, whether it's working in the city and or another one of our companies, so that we're driving that workforce of the future. So it serves two places, not only our 30% number, but also preparing those students, our 30% inside of the community at large, so that they can go after additional jobs. And just to kind of give you a small sample of that, Google has a program that we're going to be working with where if you are certified, I believe there's 6 courses that we have to fund for a student. If they complete those, that's considered the equivalent of a college educated degree for that student, because that's the population that Google needs that's trained in that particular way. So that's something that we're working on so we can drive it there, but also will that person then be trained to do something in a Department of Technology? So there are a lot of moving parts here, but we've got to grow it, we've got to groom it, and then we've got to place it.
That's really exciting to hear, Director. I mean, honestly, we have a workforce issue, altogether, especially when you dive into the trades and as much development as the city is currently experiencing. There's shortages, in all of our trades, our CDLs and things of that nature. But really, what can we do to help facilitate that pipeline growth that we know you're absolutely going to need in order to meet this 30 by 30 challenge, right? Not just meet it, but exceed it. So
exceed it. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And let me also be very clear. I'm not going to overpromise and underdeliver. This is not going to be easy. No. Which is why when I mentioned the school, we will probably kick this off with a small pilot and start with 20, 30 students. And again, we have to have the conversations with the superintendent as well as a few others. Again, all of this is 2021 in terms of here's our initiatives, here's where we're going. And we're going to have to look at this pilot. Then we're going to have to be very intentional about connecting them with the right company and their certification program, and then grow them. And if that works, then we can take it to the next thing. So that's why I said, again, I know where we need to go, and I know how we can get there. Because we're an office of 8 people right now, and I know we're going to grow to 14. It's going to be a lot of partnerships. It's going to take some very deliberate actions, and I know we already have the support not only from the council but also from the partners we're already starting to talk to. But like I said, I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver. Making a very small pilot and then mushrooming it from there.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm very excited to hear that. The other question that I have is really around this education piece. There's this narrative that, there are no Black professionals, right? And the Black professionals are out there. They're already taken. There's no people that are in construction that can and do these jobs. Literally heard these anecdotes over the summer as we were discussing some of these larger projects. And so I think that it's imperative that the city, truly own this conversation of really normalizing who our business owners are, right? Mm-hmm. And the capacity that is out there, and the skill set that is absolutely out there, and that if we are truly going to meet the recommendations of the study, and then meet some of these amazing goals that you all have set for 2021, we have to do our part. And some of that is educating our business folks, the developer and community. And so how do you see your role as the director and as this department and really owning that conversation?
So I think that it's inherent upon this office to have those conversations. That's what we're here to do. We're here to enable, we're here to recognize, and I'm going to coin a phrase that I've been saying to folks: diversity is smart business. It's about forward thinking. And we're not just doing this because it's the nice thing to do, it's the right thing to do. So if we look at 80% of our businesses in Columbus are small minority businesses with fewer than 20 people. And as we look at the economic recovery, it's dependent upon keeping them afloat. It's dependent upon ensuring that if folks are not participating in those businesses, we're able to help them pivot to someone else. We are here to help them address those needs. It's not going to be easy. Again, just by the sheer capacity of my office, we have to be very deliberate about the 2 or 3 things that we know we can do well so that we can drive this one. But we also recognize that with some of the things that we're doing with the disparity study, whether it's a small enterprise business program that we want to launch, whether it's ensuring that we have subcontractor goals that are achievable, whether we have bond waivers, whether when we launch the diversity management software system to help us track that information, and so that people it's easier for them to do business with the city. We've got to make sure that's done. But on the other side, from a workforce perspective, we have to help grow that pipeline. And again, working with human resources, and it cannot be through the traditional ranks. I'm bringing this from another place. It cannot just be, let's put it in Indeed and hope that somebody's going to apply. We've got to be intentional in outreach. We got to push versus pull. We got to push this out. And as we do this, Shayla, I recognize again, it's not going to be easy. But if we can take this and we can start with, again, the 100 plus that we want to do in the small schools and prepare them. If we could then look at the recidivism program, and then we can take that population. If we could then work with the contractors and say, here's how we're going to develop so that we can have a peer as well as a mentor program. Those are the things that we're doing next year. The answer is not an easy answer, not a simple answer. It's a lot of things that will be happening concurrently.
Yeah, and just know that you have the support of this council. Most importantly, I have been a part of a lot of these conversations as of lately, and having those uncomfortable conversations, if you will, with the folks in our business community about this very topic. And so I think we're 2020 has been a lot for many different reasons, but it definitely has helped to normalize this conversation around race, which does tend to make some folks uncomfortable acknowledging that.
But you know what I was going to say, but let's make sure, I keep going back to this, it's smart business for everyone to participate.
Agreed.
And that's where we have to, it's not him or them, it's not he or they, it's not one or the other. It's smart business for everyone to participate. Everyone can eat at this table. And we just have to enable them, not only through what we're going to do with the disparity study. That's one thing. There's several other things that we're going to enable through this office. So there is a participation, as we demonstrated with the PPP. Those folks couldn't get money at that point. We had to be very outward thinking. And that's where we're trying to take this office in the next 30 months to make sure we do that in order to enable the 30 by 30, which is a simple way to say there's a lot of things we have to do, workforce and supplier diversity.
Yeah, thank you, Director. This is the last thing. It's more just of a comment / request. I want to underscore something that Council President stated, one of his closing remarks, just around this idea of, these economic development deals where the noble goals were with the crew and with the garage, right, where we've met the 30%. I really want that to be like just the standard, right? That, we're not being presented with a potential a deal that has not gone through the purview of you all, your review, your process, had those conversations about how these diversity goals are going to be met. I truly want that to be the model and moving forward about how these deals are before they even come to council, right? And so that would be the first thing, the first request. And then second, I also chair, with housing, I chair public service and transportation. And when I'm speaking to residents, oftentimes they're unaware that the city hires returning citizens. And unfortunately, Black and Brown people make up the population that has been incarcerated. But we do hire returning citizens in certain roles. And so I hope that we can continue to elevate that very fact, because I think that that helps to meet some of these goals that you have, and filling in that the workforce area. So just those two things there. You all have done a great job this year, and I'm happy to continue working with this committee.
So I think that we may need, I will probably circle back with you just to get some help around that, just so we could propel that a little faster. Right now, I feel like we're dragging our feet a little bit on that one. And I think it's just due to the fact that we have so many, only 7 people doing 6 different things at one time. So I will circle back with you on that. And can you text me your cell phone number in the chat? So.
Councilman Remy.
Thank you very much, Council President Harden, and thank you, Director. It's been a pleasure to listen to your report. When I took this role in 2018 and started working, I'm a proud member of the NAACP and started working with Nana Watson and her team over there. We started talking about diversity, the reporting, and I was just dumbfounded to find out that everything was still done by pen and pencil, and kind of people had to do some research and in order to find out our reporting, is what type of tracking that we're doing. And so I'm excited about the new diversity management system. When will that be up and running? If you said it already, I apologize. I had a call, but if you said it already, but when can we expect that to be officially up and running, the tracking, monitoring, and reporting, so that, that's readily available for any of us to see that we're attaining our goals?
So Demita's going to give you the timeline, but it's not going to be immediate. We were aligning ourselves with what the auditor's implementation to ensure that the two systems work together. So Demita, do you want to give them the most recent timeline that we've agreed upon? Because right now it's between 6 and 9 months, but I'll let her give you the details in between.
Sure. Director Johnson stated it. The full timeline is 6 to 9 months. But what you will see is a continual rollout of various elements of the program. For example, and just to give you a quick snapshot, the implementation is slated to begin early January. We have a call tomorrow to finalize that. We intend to kick off early January. One of the first pieces that will be up and running and available to the departments, our office, and the public will be our online certification management. You'll see that in about 30 to 45 days. The next pieces will be rolling on simultaneously. We will have some of the outreach management, some of the workforce reporting will come online. Compliance will be one of the final pieces. So I would expect to see that probably towards the late summer, early fall, only because of the complexities of it and the need to have the availability of the auditor staff and their consultants, as well as to really sort of get all of that data that has been managed manually into a format that can be received into the system. We'll be working on it throughout that entire time, but you will see the compliance management piece come on a little later than some of the others. I hope you'll see the progress, however, as we roll out various aspects of it and really give people an opportunity to see not only the effectiveness of the tool, but also the transparency that the tool brings us as well.
Thank you so much, Demita. I appreciate that. And so this goal of 30%, it's very admirable. We have a long way to go, but as we know, the African-American population of this city is 30%. So shouldn't we be striving? I mean, I like to think about our accreditations when it comes to our safety, for instance. Really, the accreditations are based on whether or not the departments reflect the community that they serve. So we have so many new American refugee and immigrants and other populations outside of that. Shouldn't the goal be higher than 30%?
So I'm sorry, I was going to say, one of the things I said earlier is the most important thing is not to overpromise and underperform. And one of the things that we wanted to make sure we did, specifically as it relates to the mayor's equity agenda, is to ensure that we are realistic, but truly focused on growth in terms of where we should be. in comparison to our peer cities. So while you're right, there is this population, there's also an opportunity for us to grow across the spectrum of women and minorities inside of the city at large. But we also have to take in consideration as we grow the existing population that's here in the city. We have folks, again, that are very tenured people. We are not going to displace people for the sake of identifying folks to drive the 30 by 30. That is not the intention and that is not the goal. It's to look for qualified folks for opportunities as we grow the city in the next X number of months. And when there's an opportunity, make sure that we have a diverse pipeline, accessible talent that can potentially go after that particular opportunity. That's how we're going to grow our 30 by 30.
I know you guys do a good job with the NWB businesses, but talk a little bit about, how you're going to support that pipeline, how you're going to work on building that to, as we look at economic development deals more and more, instituting some of these requirements. How are you going to support the incubation and the development of more MWBE businesses?
So one of the things that President Hardin asked was the workforce. How many folks do we have? One of the things that we are being very deliberate about is by hiring a business development specialist or two. Actually, we have one that's coming on this year and one that's coming on next year. And the sole purpose of that role is to do exactly what you said. One, to identify, two, to enable, and two, to try to grow and get them certified and in the pipeline for this particular city. It may sound simple in terms of the 4 steps that we just had, but of course we have to look across the spectrum of what's needed, from looking at contractors to looking from street sweepers. We need to make sure that we look for diverse talent, and that we need to make sure that we bring them in and we make sure we're going to get them certified. So we're also going to be growing our certification arm. We have one person that's doing right now. And then again, that 30% growth that I'm talking about there will obviously increase as we get someone on there to help us grow those names. Because believe it or not, there's a lot of people, even during this pandemic, that have been reaching out to the city to become certified. But we've also taken care of the ones that are already certified. We touch those folks at least once a week, if not once every 2 weeks, to find out what they're doing. We just recently conducted a survey so we can find out if you've been impacted by COVID, what is it that you need and where can we go from here? We also have our data around that. And the reason I mentioned that, I was going to say Councilmember Remy, is because we want to make sure that we're being effective in our outreach so that we can grow that population. So, it's one thing to send out an email, but it's another thing to know that someone's opened it, that someone's clicked on the link, that someone's clicked on the micro link inside of that one. And this office is now, or at least this is one of the things that we're doing, we're now able to track and see how successful and intentional we are with the outreach and the support we're giving to those small businesses. And those are just the ones we know are certified. That's why the business development specialists we're bringing on board, those are the ones that are going to be going out, reaching out, bringing more people into the pipeline to get them certified.
Thank you. I appreciate that advancement in technology and utilizing that to make you more efficient. But I absolutely am ecstatic about the addition of the additional FTEs. This department has been in flux for a while and not quite gotten the attention that it deserves, in my opinion. So happy that the team that you've got in place. I know Demita very well, and certainly with your addition, I'm happy you're there and look forward to great things out of that office. So thank you.
Well, if there's anything that I feel after this call, I feel like I have a lot of cheerleaders. So I'm feeling pretty good right about now.
That's good. Happy holidays to everyone in the department.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Well, thank you to the ODI team. We appreciate this presentation. And I think it was a helpful conversation. The funny thing is, I didn't even get to like the 6 questions that my staff prepared for me. So but I think that they're worthy of feedback. So if you don't mind, we will send over those questions and we'll share it with the committee, the responses. With that, we will turn to the Department of Development and Mike Stevens for their presentation. Director?
Thank you, President Hardin. I have to say it's not easy following Director Stallings Johnson. She is a force of nature, and I hope I can bring the same level of energy. Angie, I just want to give you a heads up. At some point, I'm going to share my screen. So if you can give me that capability here, that would be great. Once again, thank you, President Hardin and members of City Council for the opportunity to present the Department of Development's Office of Small Business and Entrepreneur Development's portion of the 2021 operating budget. Joining me today for our conversation is Quentin Harris, the Deputy Director of Jobs and Economic Development, and Henry Galat, the head of the Office of Small Business. Our general fund proposal totals over $1.2 million with $940,000 specifically for programming. Our budget proposal supports initiatives in 3 areas: providing financial assistance to existing and new neighborhood support organizations that assist the Office of Small Business in executing various components of the city's small business agenda, increasing entrepreneurship and job creation through our continued support of Rev 1 in securing Ohio Development Service Agency's Third Frontier Program dollars on behalf of the City of Columbus and the Columbus region, and then launching, as an outcome of the Columbus Small Business Agenda, a branded dynamic digital platform, the Columbus Small Business Portal, that can gather robust information about entrepreneurial assets within the City of Columbus. Development's Office of Small Business, charged with cultivating entrepreneurship within our neighborhoods, leveraging private investments, and assisting the creation of retention and jobs. As Columbus continues to gain new residents, we fully expect our economy to continue to diversify. This growth will continue to require specific focus on the full support and utilization of our entrepreneurial talent. These entrepreneurs will contribute to new job creation as well as real and personal property investments throughout the city. As a result of the global pandemic, we modified the way we conducted business in 2020 by supporting small businesses in the city in the way we have never done before. We pivoted and, in partnership with Franklin County, launched the Columbus-Franklin County COVID-19 Small Business Response and Recovery Fund as a public-private partnership involving JP Morgan Chase, Rev 1 Ventures, Franklin County Economic Development, and over a dozen entrepreneur support organizations and neighborhood referral partners. The fund and the Pivot Loan Program, launched in June using CARES Act dollars, offered grants, low-interest forgivable loans, and technical assistance to hundreds of small businesses in Greater Columbus, including areas most impacted by COVID-19 pandemic. Bear with me while I pull up this one slide. I think this does a nice job capturing some of the information I'm going to be sharing going forward. The combined Columbus-Franklin County Grant Fund provided over $8.9 million to 986 small businesses through 1,123 grants. 83.7% of the grant awards approved were awarded to businesses within the city, and 16.3% to businesses outside the city but within Franklin County. In addition, 100% of the businesses had fewer than 25 employees. 83.3% of the businesses receiving grants are going to businesses with 5 or fewer employees, and 43% of the businesses receiving grants are women-owned. 709 businesses, or 80% of those receiving grants, are owned by minorities. Beyond the funding aspect, the comprehensive net effect is that over 335 small businesses reported having received initial and follow-up technical assistance support from our ESO partners. 70.5% of those responded that the funds received were used to retain or rehire employees after March 2020. Businesses assisted through the fund reported having retained 468 full-time employees and 321 part-time employees. They also reported having rehired 100 full-time employees and 97 part-time employees. Not only did we provide much-needed financial assistance to our small business community, we were able to provide critical technical assistance to these businesses as well. We also worked hand in hand with the city's Division of Income Tax to bring many of these businesses into compliance with various city income tax regulations through this process. We've been able to introduce many of our small businesses to services provided by existing and new entrepreneur support organizations. As we enter into 2021, we plan to prioritize the implementation of the city's small business portal and keep the information continually up to date and make this information readily accessible to small businesses and entrepreneurs from all backgrounds. The platform will be cost effective and meet the needs of a variety of entrepreneurs, investors, constituents, and other ecosystem stakeholders. We will also continue to work with our neighborhood referral partners, whom will assist the Office of Small Business in executing various components of the city's small business agenda. This funding partially supports the organization in their efforts to support businesses in our neighborhood business corridors. Finally, we will continue to move forward in realizing the promises of our 4 agenda priorities within the city's small business agenda. And this is reflected by the support provided to Sidika White and Associates, the Ohio Minority Supplier Development Council, and Rev 1 in this year's budget. I think it's appropriate that we participate in this effort or in this hearing with the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, because they have been a great partner, and it's been really important that we've worked together. And Council President, I appreciate the leadership that you have shown and making sure that we come together once a month and talk about the different priorities around small business and diversity and inclusion to make sure that we are as aligned as possible. I really want to thank Director Stallings Johnson for her leadership and partnership throughout this past year, and I'm excited about what 2021 will bring forward. And then finally, I want to thank the teams at not only ODI, but on council staff who've been working with us this past year. And I would be remiss if I did not wish a happy birthday to Zach Davidson in the council president's office. With that, I will take a breath and see if anyone has any questions.
Thank you for that shout out. You kind of beat me to it. I was going to have everybody sing happy birthday to Zach at the end of the hearing, but whatever we can do to embarrass that young man. Director, thank you for the presentation. Again, I'll start at the end and work my way back. That last point is something that I really stress of collaboration between your 2 offices. That has been really something that I really had asked for and really put forefront on all of our agendas and us coming together. So could you talk more? Because I also see you got to folks have to realize that our clients are our constituents, and your clients specifically are the small business and minority-owned business owners, and they don't know from the outside, I have this problem, so I should call Director Stallings Johnson, or I have this problem, so I should call Director Stevens. How are we working to unify the client experience so that me as a small business owner who has challenges can have the ease of engagement and be routed somewhere? Are we moving in that direction, or can anybody speak to that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start answering that. I think we've made great strides in that, and we've talked about this a number of times, and it's tough to have a front door to an organization as large and complex as the city. So it's important whether or not we have a small business that reaches out to our Office of Small Business or reaches out to our Office of Diversity and Inclusion, or even if they start with our Department of Public Service. We need to work internally and have the collaboration that we've built between our entities within the city. So we're given a consistent answer. And if the Office of Small Business isn't the appropriate venue to service that client's needs, we can make that referral and handoff and make sure that there's follow-up to the Office of Diversity and Inclusion. So having Henry and the leadership and the engagement that he's had out in the community and how he works with the ODI team is critically important. So the client doesn't need to see the interactions happening behind the scenes, but they need to occur. And that's where I'm encouraged, not only the leadership of Director Stallings Johnson, but from the teams and their commitment to working together.
Thank you, Director. You talked about the 8.8 million, I can't remember, that we got out to small businesses. I know late in the COVID grant disbursement season, we put out another additional allotment for Short North and downtown small businesses. How is that going? Because again, it was pretty late in terms of meeting the needs of some small businesses that maybe did not meet the first round?
Thank you, President Harden. So that 8.9 million that was on the slide and I talked about was the grant program we ran this summer. The additional $2 million, I want to ask Henry if he could speak to some of the progress we've made on that. I will give one update. Everything takes time in the city. We've gotten the actual money out to the organizations that are going to be provided to the small businesses. So they now have the cash, so they can turn around and give that money out to those small businesses that they've received applications for. But Henry, can you give a little more detail on the process and how we're going?
Thank you, Director Stevens, and thank you for that question, Council President Harden. That process is moving along pretty rapidly, to be honest with you. We don't have the luxury of time to have it do otherwise. The SIDS have identified businesses within their boundaries, and for the most part, qualified those businesses to a great extent. We look to be able to make announcements on who those businesses are and who would be receiving those funds pretty quickly. Within the next day or so, to be honest with you, because we vetted that process pretty streamlined it pretty quickly. We learned from our lessons in the first 2 rounds. We did the Recovery Response Fund over the summer in 2 rounds, round 1 and round 2. So we took forward a lot of learnings from that. And as I said, we should be able to stand that up pretty quickly. And the announcements should be coming pretty quickly on who would be getting those funds.
Thank you, Director, and thank you to Henry. I guess I have 2 more questions, but I know my colleagues have questions too. But I'll just ask one. Director, what impact has COVID had on your 2021 budget? What is new? What COVID's not going away for the next 6 months, and as we go into 21, what specifically, or maybe it hasn't, maybe the planning, but has there been baked in budgeting for the needs that COVID will bring to your department?
Well, I think the greatest impact COVID has had, and it's not budget related, but we had a small business agenda where conceptually we thought of a lot of things. With the pandemic and the grant, the CARES funding, we had to operationalize those concepts. And I can't speak highly enough about the team, that Quentin and Henry, their efforts and the partnership, not only within the city, but with our entrepreneur service organizations, as well as other partners who came together and, as I said, built the airplane as we were flying it and found a way to get significant support dollars out. Going into 21, I think the pandemic slowed down the implementation of the portal. Henry and his team are a team of 4, and they're working extremely hard. But you only have so much time, and putting together an $8 million grant program was pretty significant. So the portal now has been pushed back into 21, but I think we're ready to hit the ground running and implement that portal.
Thank you, Director. I'm going to open it up for my colleagues.
Good afternoon, Director Stevens.
Hello, Chair Faber. How are you?
It's good to see you on a Tuesday. Director Stevens always gets anxious anytime I start asking him questions. It's a running joke between he and I. But it's not even that bad tonight. And it's kind of more of a statement. I think in Director Stallings Johnson did a really phenomenal job of just laying the foundation for where the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and I think is it correct now? Is it Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, Director? Is that how the branding is going to be?
That's what I'm proposing. They haven't said yes yet, Shayla.
Okay.
But that's where I'm going with that.
Okay, great. So, keeping that in mind, Council has really leading this conversation around reimagining public safety. And, obviously given, the call for racial justice is something that I take very seriously. And you can't have, real conversations around race equity without really talking about how it touches almost every area of government, right? And these two committees are so crucial to this notion of reimagining or reinvesting in communities. And it's very challenging to be able to meet these goals that you all have talked about this evening on a very tight budget, right? 1.8 for ODI and 1.2 in small biz. And so this is more of I guess a statement for me as a member of council. And these are ways in which we invest back into communities that have been divested from. And this is how we can support folks who feel that they have been left behind, right? And how we can start to really build that pipeline and tell a different story for folks in Columbus. So with that being said, Director Stevens, are there plans to increase your staff that's been contemplated in the proposed 1.2 mil budget?
So no, we are not proposing any increase in our staff as part of the proposed 2021 budget.
Okay. And I just think we are only hurting ourselves and prolonging the work. And if the support isn't there to be able to actually do the work, right? So I will get off my soapbox for the moment, but I just think that it has to be said that this is something that I take very seriously and that I will continue to lean in on because the conversation is more than just safety. It's committees just like this one that Council President chairs. So thank you both for being here this evening. Thank you.
Before Councilman Remy jumps in, can I ask a follow-up question to Councilmember Favor's point? Maybe another question to that is not necessarily just about staff, but are there unfunded priorities that are not in this budget that would help advance the stated goals? And maybe that can be an end. I'll let you go to Remy's questions, but because I might even want to hear from Director Stallings Johnson on that, the unfunded portion of and I've been around long enough to know that there are different reasons why we can do something this year or not, but would be interested from both departments if there are unfunded priorities that didn't make. And Henry has the worst poker face. I think he's like bouncing on accident. So I'm gonna leave that out there, and I'll turn it over to Remy, and then maybe at the end ask that question to both departments.
Okay.
So now it's my turn. No one's gonna comment. Okay, get it. So Director Stevens, I push on this a lot about the importance of this particular department and us getting to the point where we start being innovative, and the importance of, being a supportive arm for our small business community. We certainly need to be there as a resource. And, now more than ever in this pandemic, the importance of that really is significant. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Neighborhood Commercial Revitalization Program. Last year, there was some talk about some numbers, and I know that it's funded in this budget to make sure that the neighborhood design center's paid and they do the design work. And then some of our neighborhood, champions for the program this is a program that works in low to moderate income tract neighborhoods or opportunity areas. One of the things I stressed to you last week was the importance of getting the word out, making sure that people understand that program exists, the opportunities and resources that are available out of this department. Can you talk a little bit about what type of funding is going to go into that program this year outside of paying for, the design work, and because it'll come out of the capital budget, correct?
So we've got a couple $100,000 in our capital budget for facade improvements, but the Neighborhood Design Center is budgeted at $143,000 in the general fund, and those neighborhood referral partners is budgeted at $77,000 out of our general fund.
Okay. You know, and that kind of goes back to Shanna's point, you know, Council President's point, you know, what do we need to do, you know, to make sure that there's more resources allocated to this department? So, I mean, that's more a rhetorical question than it is for you to answer at the moment. But when is this the online portal? When will that be up and running and fully functional?
Quentin, I'm going to ask you to answer that question for the council member.
So I'm going to defer the specifics on that one to Henry, because he's been working with our vendor really closely on trying to identify the timetable by which we could possibly procure the technology and how long it will take us to develop out the portal and the length of our contract. So Henry?
So the portal itself, a little bit of background about the portal, is an online community of sort where we get to, as Director Stevens said, operationalize a lot of the work, a lot of the contacts that have been happening over the last couple of years, to be honest, but really intensified as a result of us all having to go to online platform to communicate on a daily basis. And so it gives us that opportunity. It's going to also source out the resources that many of which we've relied on in terms of the program fund. They would be made available there, but that would be updated on a routine basis. In other words, oftentimes what you find with a portal or online directory of sort is that initial effort to source the information has a shelf life, and so we're trying to do here is have a technology-based platform that will be a logarithm kind of driven to keep that data up to date. It will take approximately, once we go through the procurement process, it will take approximately 7 weeks to load all of the data, brand the portal like it needs to be branded, add a CRM, client relationship management portion to the portal, and then launch the portal. So we're anticipating a first quarter, early second quarter launch of the portal. The technology is really robust. It doesn't take that much for us, except for making the funds available and going through the procurement process. We've already engaged with, we know that there are probably 3 vendors out there that could do what we're talking about and have a reputation in this space. So that's going to help us in terms of moving pretty quickly to get this up and running and stood up. The other piece that will allow us to do, because we believe that being able to measure what we do against our peer cities is important as well. The platform will allow us to then be able to see what other progressive cities, as we did in the small business agenda study, to be able to compare ourselves against other best practices to see how well they are engaging and moving the needle and communicating and sharing resources around small business efforts as well. So it's important that we look at those 3 or 4 top vendors and make a decision based upon, that limited universe, if you will, of players, and then be able to get that stood up pretty quickly. But we're talking about first quarter launch, and if not the first quarter, the very early stages of the second quarter, depending on procurement.
Thank you very much. Probably safe to say second to get through all the contractual and the technology stuff, but gives a good expectation, at least for those that may be listening. I do want to commend you guys on, especially Quentin and of course Henry, on all the work of getting those CARES dollars out. It was a Herculean effort to do that, and a process that was a learn as you go type of a process, but one that I think delivered admirably. And the results speak for themselves on the impact that we've been able to create, for our, especially our minority or MWBE businesses out there in this time that they needed it the most. And we'll be, charged and challenged with that again this year as we move into 2021. And hopefully our partners at the federal level will help to help us accomplish that. So thanks again. Happy holidays.
Thank you to my council members. I'll open up for that final question, starting with Director Stevens.
Thank you, President Hardin, members of council. You all kind of asked and then you kept deferring it, so I was hoping I'd get a chance to answer it. Clearly, there's always more needs and resources than what we put forth in the budget. I can tell you we've got the work that Henry and his team put together to develop that small business agenda. It was a community-driven, community-engaged process that has a lot of, there's a lot in there that if we can get additional funding to implement, that'd be great. We have to decide as a city, do we want to be the facilitator of some of these, or do we want to be the solution providers? And what does that cost? I can tell you what I appreciate most about the small business agenda is Henry's brought together a group in the community of volunteers, and he has taken what limited resources on the staffing side, and he's expanded that with the people in the community that are actually either serving small businesses or actual small businesses, and getting their input. And I think that's probably why it's the best agenda that we've had in the 20 plus years I've been in economic development. It's one of the greatest things. So I'm going to take a risk here. And I know, we'll look at Henry's poker face, and Henry said, one thing, if you to fund going into 21 from the agenda, that if we had additional dollars that you'd like to see, and Henry, please keep it to one thing, because it'd be embarrassing to hit mute on you.
I shall. I wouldn't want that to happen. So, one of the beauties of this plan that Director Stevens talked about is the ability to bring together and aggregate people in the small business space. And so when I think about the one thing that really makes sense is providing additional resources that will allow us to continue to marry our technical assistance with that of perhaps the grants or the loans or something like that. That has made all of the difference. It allows that bandwidth for people to not only get assistance, but also to learn the best practices to be able to perfect their business model and receive assistance around things such as the tax compliance issues. We never would have guessed that 50%, 65% of the businesses that are operating, some of which we all patronize, were not in compliant with income tax, and they wouldn't have probably even guessed it because it was an unknown to a large degree. But that technical assistance, that being able to drill down and marry grant funds with technical assistance, has made all the difference in the world.
And if I can add to that, I think I don't want it to be lost that the CARES Act funding actually allowed us to really engage all of our neighborhood our referral partners and our entrepreneur support organizations in a way that we wouldn't have been able to engage them without the CARES funding. And what it really did is it allowed us to put the small business agenda into action much sooner and in more of a cohesive way than maybe we would have liked, but we really had to engage all of our partners and resources to get those funds out and to set up the technical assistance providers in a way that they could help almost 1,200 businesses across the city do better and pivot in certain ways due to the pandemic. And so what it did was provide us a lot of information that we now can go back and tweak some of our plans, because we've seen some of those things in action, that we can now go back and tweak our plan and actually have a more progressive approach to some of the small business initiatives that we want to push out of the agenda. in a more calculated way, because now we truly have more data. We know how we need to support some of our entrepreneurial signature organizations out in the community. And so actually, I think going through this process over the course of 2020 actually helped advance the agenda probably a year to 18 months further than it would have any other way.
So I'll summarize by saying if we had additional resources, I think we would want to put those, act as a facilitator and put those out into the community to those solution providers who are providing that support to small businesses and continue the momentum we gathered from the work we did in the grant program.
Thank you, Director. Director Stallings?
So I'm gonna kind of keep it Sesame Street simple, if that's okay. Because I just want to kind of knit it out. We've done quite a bit: marketing, outreach, training, conducting studies, etc. At the end of the day, what we did was we scaled everything back. If I had my wish list, President Harden, I wouldn't have scaled any of that back. My marketing would have been a little bit more robust. My training would have been targeted for specific entities and specific organizations. I would have reassessed the overall outreach strategy that we're going to be working with Director Brandon and HR differently. Relationship and connections. Right now, we are an enablement, and we're relying heavily on public-private partnerships. And we're good at it, and we're even better at, we're getting better at it. But unfortunately, if we had the money, we wouldn't have to be so dependent on some of that. We could just make it happen. And that includes, most importantly, the funding. We are partners with a lot of banks, and we're going to be building that to make sure that our small minority women-owned businesses can get access to that. But imagine if we could do some of it, even if there were little micro support mechanisms. That's all we would want to do, but we can't right now, and we have to take some of that out. Some of the programs I mentioned, for example, the school program that we're going to hopefully launch, I would love to be able to fund that from this office, to say we're going to take those 100 kids. The Google programs are $475 per, and we'd love to just pay for it and launch it. But we have to public-private partner and see if we can get it done in another way. So that's just one example. When you ask what's my wish list, that would be it.
That was very, very helpful. When I was a kid and we used to go Christmas shopping, my stepmom would ask me at the end, so if money were no option, what would you get? And obviously we couldn't afford those things that we want, but what it does do is help you plan out. I was giving my stepmom hints for what she could get us for our birthday or something later on down the road. We build out, and so I appreciated this exercise and talking through what additionally we can do to serve and support our small and minority businesses.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, I think we have several speakers that are with us this evening. Miss Angie, is that true?
Yes, sir. We have 3.
Perfect. Well, then we will go to our public testimony portion. Just to remind speakers that you have 3 minutes. Miss Angie controls the speaker portion. If you would state your name and if you're representing an organization, and you have 3 minutes. Miss Angie, who's our first person?
We're going to begin, sir, with Tia Johnson because Ashley Spencer is not showing up as an attendee currently.
Okay.
Okay. Tia?
Hello, everyone. My name is Tia Johnson. I am slightly nervous, even though I've probably talked to a lot of you guys. Fresh Bloom Bins Company was created as a response to the rapidly growing need for support in waste management modernization. Fresh Bloom Bin sanitation measures will help to ensure a safe and environmentally friendly solution for the prevention of adverse health impacts for workers and the general public. Our waste collectors are hometown heroes. Not only do they work in unpleasant conditions, but our collectors are exposed to all types of health risks on the job. The average trash bin can house around 400 different bacteria per square inch. One sanitation worker noted, "Sometimes the smell is so bad, I want to vomit." Protecting our essential workers from hazardous of bacteria and viruses commonly detected on in and around unsanitary garbage bins will help reduce turnover rates, reduce costs from workers' compensation claims, and increase employee morale. Investing back into the community, creating self-sustainable communities with long-term solutions is the heart of our business. Fresh Bloom Bins is committed to hiring diversity among the residents in the Columbus area, including members of marginalized groups with a targeted focus on restored citizens. The South Side, Linden, and Franklinton area will be our first stop. Our company will offer a competitive compensation that ensures a $15 minimum wage for all employees. We are projecting between 20 and 22 employees by year 2. With our focus on hiring Columbus residents, the total gross payroll for the city's income tax will be approximately $1.6 million, plus $40,000 in income tax revenue to Columbus every year. Our state-of-the-art equipment will close the education inequity in our community. The importance of STEM education extends far beyond school walls. The right kind of STEM education not only has the power to boost academic performance, but also can improve problem solving, critical thinking skills, boost confidence, and open doors to higher paying future careers. Speaking of diversity, throughout the night, I am the only female-owned, minority-owned business in the Midwest to offer curbside bin dumpster cleaning services. Fresh Bloom Bins is technology in combination with a common sense approach to cleanliness in the 21st century. We are asking members of City Council to fund this initiative for 2021 by amending the budget, awarding discretionary funds to Fresh Bloom Bins, and adopt this as a solution recommended by stakeholders. There's also a vacant seat for the Ohio Materials Management Advisory Council. We're asking that possibly we could be appointed to that seat as well. Allow us to integrate environmental performance. We'll make an impact not only just in our community, but also set the standards, collaboration, a clean environment, and healthy neighborhoods, and a workforce development. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, I'll take them at this time.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tia, for joining us this evening. And for me, this was my first download on learning about your company and the services that you provide. One of the things that I think we just heard about specifically from the development department was that technical assistance and support that the city can provide as you scale up. So I want to start there. But it sounds like maybe you've already met with some of our council members about your project. And I was wondering if any of my colleagues, if they've engaged, had any question or comment about Tia's business.
Tia, it's so good to hear your voice. Thank you for being here this evening. As I shared with you over the summer, I really love your idea. It's just something that I personally would have never even thought of. But after hearing your presentation, I was really excited for the possibility of what it could do in communities that are already struggling to really work around this trash issue, right? And unkempt alleys. And I know trash is trash, right? But I think the way that your company is looking to kind of change the narrative around trash and how communities are upkept, right? I think that's exciting. It's an exciting product to really be talking about. I would be remiss if I did not shout out Tim Swager. I know you've worked with him quite a bit over the summer in just talking through CARES dollars and things like that. He has been very helpful, in my opinion, and really working with you on that technical assistance, that small business level. And really helping provide some additional support. So I look forward to nurturing this relationship with you, and anything my office can continue to do to support you in your efforts, we're going to do so.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that so much. Thank you.
And hi, Tia. It's Emmanuel chiming in. It's great to hear your voice as well. We certainly appreciate, the collaboration you've had with Tim Swager and the refuse department, and we certainly want to try to find ways to continue to support your efforts and making sure that you have a successful business, because you really are you exemplify, entrepreneurship, and certainly appreciate the work that you put into this. So we'll continue to work with you and support you in any way that we can. So happy holidays.
Thank you so much. Likewise to you.
Thank you so much, Tia, for being with us this evening. Ms. Sandy, who's next?
I believe it's pronounced Nakai Willis.
Welcome to council. Can you hear me? Can you hear us? Are you with us?
Yes, I can.
All right. Welcome to council.
Thank you so much. My name is Nikkei Willis, and I'm pleased to testify before the City Council Small and Minority Business Committee in today's public hearing. I want to first thank you for the invitation to share our thoughts and experiences with you and the committee as well. As the CEO of the Urban Accelerator X, which is also known as the U, I come before you on behalf of my two partners, George and Lauren, and the 20 minority lifestyle businesses we've helped scale in the last year of operation, as well as the countless minority businesses who are fighting to stand in spite of all the challenges of 2020. Since 2019, we have focused on filling the gap as an entrepreneur support organization, assisting with some of the very areas actually highlighted by the Next Street assessment that led to the small business agenda being released last December, a year ago tomorrow. Our internal agenda and core values closely resemble the published agenda, where we've successfully expanded awareness of resources, built capacity of ecosystem stakeholders, and fostered connectivity among anchors and small businesses. And now post-COVID, also assisting with opportunities to close the digital divide for urban lifestyle businesses looking to pivot their business model, which is not new, but as with many diversity and inclusion issues that we face, COVID-19 has highlighted the impact of inadequate access and made it visible and very real. With collaboration as a core value, we utilize a team of subject matter experts from the community in order to provide facilitation and consulting services. And we use the Kaufman Fast Track as the basis for our custom, culturally competent curriculum to educate small minority businesses as they seek to launch and or scale their businesses. We've been able to affect 20 businesses intimately and help share awareness of resources with many more. We've been able to survive COVID by engaging revenue streams that aren't necessarily directly related to our initial focus, which is teaching urban entrepreneurs. So while we're glad to be a part of the conversation today, we moreover hope to continue to be a part of the conversation moving forward. Minority, women, and veteran-owned and operated businesses like ours are doing the work, self-operated, self-funded, and we need the small and minority business committee's engagement, guidance, and support to ensure our efforts as an ecosystem builder are in line with the small business agenda and help the agenda outcomes. For example, providing information on how to become a, quote, certified entrepreneur support organization in the eyes of the city. So I want to thank you again for your time and your continued efforts for the community, and I'll open it if you have any questions.
Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you more so for the work that you're doing in the community, especially the role that you played this year. Competent support matters, but it also representation matters, and being a minority business leader in support is really, really important. Do any of my colleagues or even the directors or Henry who may work with the U have any questions or comments?
Council President, if I may, I'll ask Henry or Quentin to share how do we certify someone as an entrepreneur service organization. I think this would be great to make sure they're included in our support of the agenda.
Yes, I think we will gather your information and set up a time offline to have a conversation with you. We are always looking for great organizations to partner with, as you listed through the agenda, and you seem like you've read the plan. So we would love to set up a virtual opportunity to talk with you and learn a little bit more about your organization and figure out how to plug you into the strategy.
That would be absolutely amazing. We welcome that idea. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you so much. Miss Angie, we have one more speaker.
Yes, sir. It looks like Bob Lighty.
Oh, that's right.
Hello there.
Welcome to council.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Cool. Well, this has been a really interesting, informative session. And well, first of all, I'm Bob Lichty, Executive Director of the Parsons Area Merchant Association. I'm on the advisory committee for the Columbus Small Business Agenda. Pretty much everything we've been talking about is stuff that we're engaged with. So this is very timely. I really want to thank the folks from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion for such a detailed, wonderful, impressive presentation. I'm involved with some of the efforts under Henry's leadership and Clinton and Director Stevens. I'm involved with some of the efforts regarding the portal and community outreach. And that portal is going to be a wonderful toolkit. And it's a reminder to me that we need to figure out ways that we can incorporate that and tie it out and link it in closely with the wonderful work that's being done on the diversity front and with some of the metrics and goals, there. A bunch of what I was going to say actually has already been said. I was very glad to hear of council interest in supporting the NCR program, as well as just talking about if we had more, if money was not an object, what would we do? More technical assistance. PAMA, our group, is a referral organization, but we also, I don't know if we officially are in an ESO, but we've done a lot of support and work tightly with the ESOs with the small business agenda. It just, what Henry has put together here is amazing. And Henry and his team. And to have, it was so interesting when the COVID funds and the funding opportunity came in with the CARES dollars. And thank God, because I think we saved a bunch of businesses. I do worry about what's going to happen between now and the summer, because we had funding here up till recently and not having as much, so that's a concern. Any lobbying that could be done for, I think, more federal dollars would be helpful. But just in general, I think supporting the technical assistance, I think this is really going in the right direction, and I'm very excited about this portal as a tool for us. Not that it solves everything, but it's a way to organize, and it's a way to really make sure we're getting those resources and connections out to folks. And with that, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. This work is really important. It's certainly the highlight of my community career to be involved with it. So.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you again too for your service. You've been around for a long time providing those services along the South Side, along Parsons Avenue, and you before we even knew what the terminology that Henry created, you were that for us. You were that service organization. So we appreciate you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues or from the departments? Seeing none. All right. All right. Well, I think that brings us to the end of this hearing. I actually just want to thank everybody. I think this was a really robust hearing. I learned things. I think we connected some points, and it gives us a vision for where the mayor's office and the departments are heading, and even some real opportunities for council to engage as we go through this budget process over the next 2 months or so. And so let me see, did any of my colleagues have closing comments? All right. Well, with that, if you'd like to talk with our office further about the 2021 budget, you can call 614-645-2726, or you can email Zach Davidson. And again, it's his 27th birthday at zgdavidson@columbus.gov. Always happy to chat with folks. So have a great evening. Thank you, guys. That concludes the hearing.